The Bears came out of Week 1 with a tough loss to the Vikings. But now that the PFF grades have dropped, we can really dig into who shined and who struggled in that season opener. Let's start with some standouts, because despite the final score, there were definitely guys who put in solid performances that deserve to be highlighted. Right at the top of that list is Darnell Wright. Now, when most fans hear his name connected to that game, the first thought is that holding call that absolutely killed momentum. And yes, that penalty was called, it was costly, but when you take the full picture into account, Wright actually played a really strong game. He finished as the highest graded offensive player for Chicago, coming in just under a 78 overall. That's impressive, especially considering the amount of pass protection snaps he logged. He did not allow a single pressure on roughly 40 passing plays, which is huge when you're trying to protect a young quarterback like Caleb Williams. Of course, there were two penalties, the false start and then that controversial hold. And that really points back to what has been the biggest hiccup for him early in his career, those occasional concentration lapses. It is not a question of his physical ability. It is simply those moments where he jumps early or gets flagged for something avoidable. If he can clean that up, we're talking about a player with legitimate long-term upside. I thought the second half of last season he started to find a new gear, and when you watch him you started to think, this guy looks like a borderline Pro Bowl talent. Maybe not all pro level yet, but absolutely someone you can build around on the offensive line. He has size, strength, and when he gets his hands on a defender, he is very difficult to get around. That is why I see this year as another jump forward for him, because his foundation is already strong. He more than held up on that right side, and that is especially noteworthy considering Jonah Jackson, the guy next to him, really struggled all night. Now, shifting to Caleb Williams. His debut was one of the more anticipated storylines of Week 1, and while the final result left fans with mixed feelings, the PFF grades actually gave him some credit. He ended up as the second highest graded player on the Bears roster. His overall grade landed in the high 70s, with his passing grade sitting closer to average at around 68, but his rushing grade was excellent at 86. And honestly, that matches the eye test perfectly. As a passer, there were flashes, but there was also inconsistency. He held onto the ball too long, averaging over 3 seconds per dropback, and that put extra pressure on the offensive line. But as a runner, he was electric. He had multiple scrambles where he showed off that next-level athleticism, including the touchdown run, where he reportedly reached 21 miles per hour according to Next Gen Stats. That kind of speed out of a quarterback changes the way defenses have to prepare. He nearly had another rushing touchdown late in the game before hitting Rome Odunze for a score, and that balance of threat really stood out. What also struck me is that he looked a little quicker than he did in college, which makes me wonder if he slimmed down just a touch in the offseason. Regardless, it was encouraging to see that type of explosiveness right away. The passing side of things clearly needs to tighten up. He has to become more consistent with his reads and his timing. But when you see that type of running ability paired with the arm talent we know he has, it is only a matter of time before it clicks. And if you're offensive coordinator Ben Johnson, you have to at least consider leaning into that skill set in the short term. Some design runs, maybe some zone read concepts, especially in the red zone, could really unlock another dimension to this offense. Another name that deserves recognition is Kyler Gordon. Going into the game, there were some questions about whether he would even be healthy enough to contribute effectively. But he stepped up. Yes, he had that early penalty that made people nervous about how his night might go, but after that he settled in and played well. His biggest moment was the pick six that gave the Bears control and should have been the turning point that sealed a win. Unfortunately, the team failed to capitalize, but Gordon's play should not be overlooked. His coverage throughout the night was solid, and even on the one play where he got beat by Justin Jefferson on an underthrown ball, the coverage itself was tight. He just didn't get his head turned around in time. That is something you can live with, especially when you combine it with the positive impact he had overall. When a cornerback makes a play like a pick six against one of the top wide receivers in football, that is the type of performance that should tilt a game in your favor. And the encouraging thing for Chicago is that if Gordon is healthy and you pair him with Tariq Stevenson and Jalen Johnson, suddenly you have options on the outside. Maybe you rotate them, maybe you stick with matchups, but either way it gives the secondary flexibility. Gordon showed a lot of growth from last year. He had a strong training camp, and seeing him deliver on the big stage is exactly what the Bears need from him. So between Wright's strong showing up front, Caleb flashing as a dual threat, and Gordon making a game-changing defensive play, there were definitely bright spots in Week 1. It is easy to get caught up in the loss and the frustration of letting a winnable game slip away, but the building blocks are there. Wright looks like he is ready to take that next step. Caleb has the tools, even if the polish is still developing. And Gordon's confidence should only grow after making a statement play on Monday Night Football. The Bears may not have closed the deal against Minnesota, but these performances stand out as reasons for optimism moving forward. At the top of that list has to be Jonah Jackson. Watching the game live, it already felt like he was the weak link on the offensive line, but once the grades came out, the numbers confirmed just how rough of a performance it was. He finished with an overall grade just above 30, and his pass blocking grade was a jaw-dropping 22. For context, anything below 50 is considered well below average, and 22 is bottom of the barrel. That is a nightmare outing for someone who was supposed to bring stability and veteran leadership inside. He gave up multiple pressures, drew 2 false start penalties, and simply looked out of rhythm all night. Considering the Bears are paying him $17 million per year, the expectation is not just competency, but high-level play. Instead, what they got was the exact opposite, and it absolutely derailed offensive consistency. The contrast between Jackson and Darnell Wright was glaring. While Wright locked down his side and kept Caleb Williams clean, Jackson was constantly getting beaten in both pass protection and the run game. This was supposed to be a year where the offensive line turned the corner and protected their young quarterback, but with the guard struggling that badly, it put stress on the entire unit. The Bears cannot afford repeat performances like that, especially in divisional games where every possession matters. Looking across the offensive line, it was not just Jackson who had issues. Braxton Jones came in around a 58 grade, which is mediocre at best. Joe Thuney was in the same ballpark, and while he actually had some really nice moments in pass protection where he helped out and looked solid, the PFF system graded him harshly in the run game. Drew Dalman, as expected, was stronger in run blocking than in pass protection, but he still allowed some ugly pressures that stood out. When you put it all together, the line as a whole did not live up to expectations, and that explains why the offense sputtered for long stretches. On the defensive side, Andrew Billings had one of the more disappointing showings. He logged just over 20 snaps and finished with a grade in the mid-30s, which is simply not good enough for a veteran defensive tackle expected to be a run-stopping presence. His role in this defense is to clog lanes, occupy blockers, and make it difficult for opposing running backs to get to the second level. Instead, he was pushed around, failed to record a single stat, and looked ineffective. There have already been whispers about whether he is a great fit in this defensive scheme, and games like this only add fuel to that conversation. When Jordan Mason and the Vikings ground game started gaining momentum, Billings was nowhere to be found, and that is a problem for a player whose job description is built around preventing exactly that scenario. Another player who came away with a forgettable grade was Dominique Robinson. Now, he did not play many snaps, just about 10 total, but when you're a rotational pass rusher, those limited opportunities are your chance to make an impact. Robinson failed to record a single pressure, a single tackle, or really any noticeable contribution. It is one thing to have a quiet game if you're playing 50 or 60 snaps, but when your snap count is in the teens, you need to flash in some way. What made matters worse for him was the performance of Tano Pasanyan, who was elevated from the practice squad. Pasanyan played only a few more snaps, but managed to rack up 2 pressures and a sack. That kind of production in limited action highlights the gap, and it creates the possibility that Robinson's spot in the rotation is in jeopardy if he cannot turn things around quickly. You can only elevate practice squad players a handful of times before you have to commit to a roster spot, and if Pasanyan keeps producing, the Bears might not hesitate to make that switch. The struggles were not limited to the trenches either. There were lapses in discipline and execution across the board, and it showed in the missed opportunities to put the game away. A pick 6 from Kyler Gordon should have been the dagger, but the offense could not sustain drives to extend the lead, in large part because the line was collapsing under pressure. The defense, meanwhile, gave up key plays and moments where they needed to hold firm. The Bears had opportunities to step on the gas and bury Minnesota, but their mistakes gave the Vikings life. If you zoom out and look at the PFF grades collectively, the story they tell is one of inconsistency. On one hand, you had standout performances from Wright, Gordon, and Caleb as a runner. On the other, you had glaring weaknesses in the interior offensive line, disappointing outings for veterans like Billings, and a complete no-show from rotational guys like Robinson. In the NFL, games are often decided by which side of that balance tips heavier, and in Week 1, it was the negative side that outweighed the positive. What makes it all the more frustrating is that the Bears had every chance to win. A defensive touchdown, explosive plays from their rookie quarterback, and strong edge protection should have been enough. But when the offensive line caves in from the inside, when your run-stuffing defensive tackle fails to impact the game, and when depth players cannot seize their moments, you leave the door open. And that is exactly what happened. Minnesota walked through that door, and Chicago walked away with a loss that should have been a win. So as the team heads into Week 2, the focus has to be on shoring up those weaknesses. Jonah Jackson has to be worlds better than what he put on tape. Andrew Billings has to prove that he can fit this scheme and make his presence felt. And Dominique Robinson has to show urgency before someone else takes his role outright. If those things do not change, the same problems will keep showing up, and the Bears will find themselves in close games that slip away instead of stacking wins in the standings. Before we continue, don't forget to subscribe to our channel and give this video a like. Your support helps us keep bringing you the latest updates on our Chicago Bears. And don't be shy. Drop your thoughts on the news in the comments below. Rumors are swirling through Chicago that the Bears may be on the verge of making the most explosive signing in franchise history. Sources close to the team suggest that star wide receiver CeeDee Lamb could be heading to Soldier Field, and the city is already buzzing with anticipation. Lamb, widely regarded as one of the NFL's brightest defensive talents, has been linked to a number of teams in recent seasons. But whispers indicate that Chicago is positioning itself to land him in what could be a record-breaking move for the Bears. Fans and insiders alike are speculating that this wouldn't just be a standard free agency acquisition. It would be a transformative moment for a franchise that has been searching for a true offensive superstar. Lamb's speed, route-running precision, and ability to make contour heating up behind closed doors, with front office executives reportedly working tirelessly to finalize terms that could shock the league. The potential signing of Lamb has already ignited conversations on social media, where fans are imagining a Bears offense that could rival some of the most feared in recent memory. Some insiders suggest that this move could redefine the team's strategy for years to come, giving Chicago not only a top-tier wide receiver, but also a marquee name capable of drawing attention and excitement nationwide. While nothing has been officially confirmed, the buzz is palpable, and speculation is reaching a fever pitch. Could this be the moment the Bears reclaim relevance and assert themselves as championship contenders? If Lamb does indeed arrive in Chicago, it wouldn't just be a headline. It would be a seismic shift in the NFL landscape, a move that fans and analysts would discuss for decades. Until the deal is announced, all we can do is watch, wait, and imagine the possibilities as CeeDee Lamb edges closer to potentially becoming the most celebrated signing in Bears history. That's it for this update. If you enjoyed the video and want to stay updated with exclusive news about our Chicago Bears, be sure to subscribe to our channel and hit that like button. We can't wait to hear your thoughts in the comments. See you in the next video.